You are now listening to the I Think I Love My Wife podcast. And this is your best friend's best friend, Chidozie Okafor, ready to take you on another journey. Are you with me? Because I'm ready. Let's get it. This episode is sponsored by Nello Effect, a coaching and consulting service that helps people turn mindfulness into action as they navigate the dating world as well as their relationships. Follow on Instagram at nello.effect and find more information in the episode description. Welcome to another episode of I Think I Love My Wife podcast. I'm back with Terrence. We talked about dating for a bit and his experiences in these streets, but now we're going to talk more about his marriage and his relationship and what he's learned, how he's evolved, not only as a man but as a husband. So you made me laugh. Why you so laughing?
In these streets,
You was in them. Were you not?
Let's get to the better part of my life.
No, I'm just saying you was outside, like not my outside. His outside looked better than my outside.
No,
but
he was outside like everybody else.
That's like driving to Highland Park versus out here in my neighborhood. It looked different. But let's move forward. I do want to make sure we're spending some time, honoring your relationship, how it's evolved, the growth that you've experienced in it, and your wife as well. And so you've alluded to it before in the past episode of where your mindset was, but just for if they didn't catch it or this is their first time in our discussion, what were you looking for when you got into your relationship, and would you say it's been on par or different from what you expected?
Well, from the last episode, I was looking to have fun, just enjoying the conversation and the time and presence of the woman at the time. I wasn't looking for anything further. My mindset changed because I met the right woman that made me change my mindset. Mm-hmm. And so, yes, it's evolved definitely from dating to being in a committed relationship to now marriage.
Yeah. When you think back in terms of the evolution of your relationship in dating and then now being a husband and a father, what are some of the things that when you were outside placing value on whenever you thought about like something long term that now you realize is not that important?
Placing value on, honestly, just I think it's the opinions and the perception of other people on your relationship. So everybody's always going to have something to say. Mm-hmm. Whereas now I can really care less about opinions and what people think or where we should be. Because that's also just individually. People, you think that you should be at a certain place. You think you should be doing this. And also kind of in your relationship, we should be doing this because, and you see everybody else doing that. I don't really care about what everybody else is doing. Yeah. It's like me and that person.
And that's all that really matters at this point in time. y'all are one.
Yes.
If you think about the same question in a different light, right? When we're dating, man or woman, there's certain things that you hear about the list. What's the list of things that you're looking for in a partner, whether it's looks, job, salary, family? What are things that you probably were checking off?
Correct. So I would say one thing is probably salary or money, or kind of status. Like, what does this person do? How much money? What kind of car do they have? Just because, not that I didn't have my own. It's just like, okay, what are they bringing to the table? Yeah. But I don't think about that. Now we're doing just fine, but it's not something that I think about, and it's just not important because, like, you can have all the materialistic things you want, but that's not going to make a relationship work. Yeah,
and no, but I think it's fair because a lot of people do that. I'm guilty of it too. Have things that I would call superficial. They're important. Like, you want someone that is attractive, that you find attractive. Do they got to be a 10? Or 9.6? No, but you want someone that's attractive, so they're important in that sense. But what I've learned, and I think you correct me if you feel the same way or you've experienced it similarly or different, is that in putting value on those things, we almost treat it like it's a forced ranking system. Like, if you put value on these things, these other things stop having value, right? And in doing that, what I realized is that in putting value on those things, I was missing the value that other things were bringing or could bring to the table. And I think I had to realize, like, I'm focused on what the value that these things brings that we just talked about. And in focusing on that, I wasn't aware, or I was missing in terms of how much value some of these other things that I wasn't accounting for were bringing into my life. And once you start getting them, you start realizing, well, this aspect or this dimension of my life that's gotten better or that she brings to the table is really more important or really more valuable than I would have imagined or would have weighed if you asked me about, how important this is thing to me.
Agreed. And I don't want to say, I think that I didn't answer the question directly, but I've always known what I want in a woman. And I've always known the attributes. So I say, not that I wasn't ever talking to a woman because she had this or she had that. So it's a little hard for me to answer that question because, like, I've always known,
what were those things?
So one, nurturing. I've always been family oriented. So, like, if a woman wasn't, like, nurturing or couldn't be motherly, like, I knew at the end of the day, like,
it had a cap on how far.
It's a cap on how far. Even, like, nurturing to me, like, I'm a man, I take care of business, but at the end of the day, like, I want to be taken care of.
Yeah.
She had to be nurturing and motherly. Like, that was like a non-negotiable. One, I said earlier, like, I really enjoy how dynamic my wife is and being able to, because I grew up in Pleasant Grove, so whether we hang a barbecue in the hood, whether you're at a corporate event, whether you're friends and family,
some versatility.
I can literally bring her anywhere. And, like, I remember we was at my partner house, it was a barbecue, but I wanted to hang out with my partners. And so we're in the garage playing dominoes, drinking. She went in the house, she talking to the family. Like, every time I show up now, they're like, where Ashley? I'm like, oh, y'all don't. But I love that I can take her everywhere. And we don't have to just be, like, arm in arm, hemmed up to each other. Like, as far as, like you mentioned earlier, so I do have nephews and a niece. There were times where, like, she would be around them, but she loved them like they were her own. So I've always known qualities in a woman. I've never been attracted to the limelight of this person has this or this status. And so that's why it's a little hard for me to answer that question.
But let's say you met a woman that was very nurturing. You could bring her in multiple spaces, and she fit. She loved on and cared for your nephews like it was her own. But she wasn't cute. She wouldn't have a chance with you.
I wouldn't have approached her in the first place.
That's what I'm saying. So those things matter, right? But I think we over-index on those things.
You say we over-index, but I don't think I lessened my. No, it was still
You lessened it if that person doesn't have a chance. Like, if you tell me, like, this is critical, these are mission critical things that this woman needs to have, but she's not cute, she can't even get in the door, then, like, that thing is a gateway to finding out. Mission critical things that matter to you.
But the first question you asked, you said things that were important then that may not. No, it's still important.
Okay,
that's what I'm saying.
Like, it didn't change. It's still equally important.
It didn't change. I think my wife is gorgeous, and when I walk in, like,
she still needs to be gorgeous. That the looks didn't matter.
You listen, like, I know when we go somewhere, I'm used to people trying to talk to my wife.
Yeah.
I let her handle, but I know that when like, but you said that's not important. It's still
true.
Granted, like, we're not gonna all look, like, my hairline ain't as strong as it was 10 years ago.
I had to come home.
Yeah, we're I'm not gonna be in the same shape I am, 10 years from now. Yeah, but by that point, but yes, but you said that's not important.
To your point,
yes,
looks for you has not changed. That is equally important. I understand it. I guess I was trying to extract. Are there other things, right, that you may have when you were dating thought were important? Maybe on the same level or close to how you might have been filtering with looks, right? Hey, she meets the looks test. There might have been another test that you wanted her to meet, right? And when you look back, like, that one that I was filtering through wasn't one that really I needed to filter through.
let's circle back because
You can't think of nothing. Okay,
no,
nothing else.
I kind of stay true to what
Stand
I
on
want.
it. Stand on it. I'm just pushing. Stand
Yeah.
on it. If it doesn't change, it doesn't change. When you think about the role that, well, before we do, how do you think your wife would have answered that question? For her,
So
not necessarily for you, like
probably
for you.
so probably materialistically, my wife likes nice things, and it's okay for
It's a lot of women
for
that likes nice
people
things, yeah.
to like nice things, for women to like nice things. But I am a very simple guy. A very simple guy.
What was your hamburgers? It was just like
it doesn't matter like how much money I have. I'm dressed pretty neutral. I'm never gonna be some slouch, but I'm not gonna walk in the room be best dressed.
I don't think I'll ever see you with
Yeah.
like a Gucci
Correct.
sweater or something like that.
I'm not like that. But my wife, I think yesterday we went out. She had with the Hermes slides and the sandals
Yeah.
but she likes nice things. That's fine. We balance each other. But when I met my wife, I think I had on some Vans. I had like on a regular T-shirt, and then when I started spending the night over her house. I think it was a Gap shirt. And if I really like the shirt, I won't buy the shirt in multiple colors.
Listen.
She'd be like, "Tim, do you just buy this?" I'd be like, "Yeah, I like that shirt."
Yeah.
So I just bought it in multiple colors. Whereas now, like, she may have placed a little bit more. She still likes nice things, but I think now she has a more appreciation for, like, just value of, like, financial stability. So she's a lot more budget conscious. And then once she has this figured out, then I open myself up to be able to buy nice things.
Yeah, budget. One of my favorite words. Budget. Yeah. I love that word. On my first date with my partner now, I said, "Hey, I live by a budget. And if this is not about your life, we not gonna work." And she gives me a hard time today when I talk about budget, or she wants to do something. I'm like, "Is it in the budget?" She's like, "Budget." So I feel like we're the same way when it comes to financial discipline. In terms of, I like nice things too, but in terms of how do we spend and all that. Moving the conversation along, we think about intimacy in your relationship. What role do you think it's played, and how has it evolved now that you're married? Emotionally, physically, spiritually, intellectually.
So I think intimacy is one place where my wife has really challenged me, because you talk about emotionally, physically, spiritually, emotionally. And the first thing men always think of is physical. And of course, when we were dating, we had sex before marriage. We were dating, we had, sex. But I would say this is prior to her moving to Dallas. Early on, while we were dating, I did have sex outside of her. And so when we were kind of in a gray area, and guys always try to play in the gray area, I was having sex with other women. And that all ended up coming out. Like you say, it always leads to drama. Men just need to be upfront. And so therefore, then sex wasn't the same between me and her. And we had to get stronger emotionally in order to get back to the physical. And for me, it was like a switch. Like, all right, I did all this, but we're good now. Let's get back to it. And then one day she told me, she was like, "Terrence, you don't place an importance on sex. You'll have sex." I'm not gonna say I'll have sex with anybody. In her eyes, that's how it felt. But she was like, "You'll go out and have sex with multiple people. You don't place an importance on sex. Sex is important to me, and you now broke that. And so it's hard for me to get there with you." And so then we had to go deeper emotionally in order to get back to the sexual. And so that's what's evolved, and that it all kind of works together. One, having sex with somebody that you're emotionally tied to is always going to be better. But I had to kind of dig myself out of a hole that I caused because I had the wrong mindset early on in our dating phase.
And when you say dig yourself out of a hole, it can be interpreted different ways. So do you mean like where you guys were at in the relationship, or in the sense of how you were as an individual constructed, and what your thoughts on or to like almost rebuild yourself to be in a place where you could now be what she needed?
Correct. I needed to be where she needed me to be, and also needed to give her that confidence again, that like, hey, he's in it emotionally, spiritually, mentally, and physically all together in order for her to get back to like, because I'll just be honest, she'd be like, why should I want to fuck you if, you willing to, do X, Y, Z.
Yeah.
And so we got over that stage like early on in our relationship.
Was that during the break? Well, before the break, after the break?
That was kind of, that was during the break period.
Gotcha. Yeah.
Because I said, yeah, we took a break, but guys, we always be trying to creep back in, slide into the DM, and be like,
and wait till the time is right.
Hey, I'm gonna be in your town, And so she challenged me a lot in that area, and so that's where I had to grow, and I had to learn like, how is she feeling? What is the ramifications of what I've done in the past, and like, how do I fix that? How do I reassure her?
Yeah.
And so I think there's been a lot of growth, one, to build comfort and confidence back in her, and two, for me to kind of learn how to listen to her and her needs.
Yeah. Well, there's several things to unpack there. One of the things that I guess stands out a bit is that the fact that you said she challenged you. And sometimes, I'm not saying it's all women, but there's how do I say this? There's a beauty and an art to challenging people in an effective way. Because I think guys want and respect the challenge, right? Especially if it's someone that he likes or is into. And sometimes there's a hesitancy on women, like challenging a guy in that way. I don't want to, make it seem like it's an ultimatum type of thing. But a respectful, healthy challenge, I think guys appreciate and respect.
Correct.
But guys also don't want the rah, rah, rah kind of challenge. And so I appreciate the fact that you said she challenged me, because I think sometimes women hear that with a negative, when they're in their situation, they're like, I don't want to challenge too much, now it becomes a thing. But there's a way to challenge someone in like a respectful way, knowing your worth, knowing what you're willing to lose and not lose, where the guy sees it and he can't do nothing but respect it.
Correct.
I guess, can you speak to how her challenges to you looked? And I'm sure it's like a series of conversations, but were there things that stood out for you in the way she challenged you that were effective?
And so, one, the word challenge, she probably will not say I challenged him, but me as a man, if I am a problem solver. If you come to me with a problem, I'm going to give you a solution. Mm-hmm. And so if she's saying, this is how I feel, and this is a hurdle to why I feel that way, and this is what you have done to contribute to the situation, in my eyes, that's now a challenge, because we're not where we need to be. What do I need to do as a man to change, modify, in order to get us to the place where we need to be? So if she says, hey, we are not on the same page, whether it's physically, emotionally, spiritually, because of X, Y, Z, I now have to figure out a way of how do we get there. And so I really think it just goes back to communicating. Mm-hmm. And so if a woman, like, if I want to have sex every day and she's like, no, we're not going to have sex every day, I'll be like, okay, understandable. But if I'm trying to have sex, 2-3 times a week, and she's like, well, that's, that's fine, but here's what's stopping me. Mm-hmm. And it's like, okay, I need something
that's doable, but
that's doable, but there's something else that's stopping me. And then, so that's why I say she probably wouldn't say it was a challenge. I say it's communicating on what are the hurdles in order for us to be able to get back where we need to be sexually.
Yeah, or what is it going to take for us to get there, right?
Yeah.
I like that. I appreciate the distinction in that I'm trying to pull out, some of the meat in what you're saying. Mm-hmm. That's, I think, because I know you, is assumed for people that may not know you and then may take it and run with it. I think part of his personality type, yeah, and part of his level of interest. And if someone is a problem solver, there's some people that are not, and they just can't help it. That's not their makeup. I think a lot of guys are. We're fixers, mm-hmm, naturally. And so if you, assuming that you're a natural fixer for things that you care about, and you've I would say, grown to the point where there is some care in there, whether it's sex or anything else, if someone tells you that something is not right and you want things to be right, you're going to figure a way to make ends meet. on that. And so I'm trying to extract what you're saying, but also what needs to be in place. You can't just not have like a rapport with a guy, or he doesn't like you that much or demonstrate
so
it.
when
And then she's like, well, I need you to do this. And he's like, well, he's a fixer. Well, he don't want to fix that problem.
Yeah, but all right. So let's set the ground rules. When I was answering that question, I'm answering it in regards to like we're already engaged. Like we're serious. Like I'm not answering the question from a dating perspective.
So great. So good context, because I didn't know that, but I think people can assume things. So had that conversation come up, let's say you're on the other end of the break, right? You guys are dating, you're not married. This is 2018, you know, but before proposal, right? And she's like, hey, this is how I feel, you know, maybe have, you know, some, you want more sex or whatever the thing is, or whatever the topic is. And she says, hey, Terrence, I need this. I'm not getting this. I don't want to be fucking like other. I need you to be more in us to be more unified in these ways, have more intimacy. Those may not be her words, right? But she's letting you know, like, hey, here's the disconnect. You wouldn't at that time be trying to fix it?
Maybe not.
I'm just trying to figure out.
Yeah, no, it just depends on where we are in our relationship. Where do I think we're going on our relationship? Like everything is a balance. And so if we were early on in our relationship and I didn't know how, and we weren't that strong, like in my perception, like, yes, I'm going to do less. I'm going to say, hey, this is probably more work than what it's worth.
Or what you're thinking about is
correct.
worth.
What I'm thinking out is worth. Whereas we're in a committed relation. Like when I proposed and we got married, I don't believe like ain't no other. My wife could be like, Terrence, I'm leaving you. I'm done. I'm tired of your shit. And I'm be like, no, you're not. You ain't going nowhere. Not in a. You know.
Same way you say, hey, here's my phone. Stop playing. Give me a
correct.
Get back in here. Let's fix this.
It's not in. No, don't take it and run with it. But yeah, it's a okay. How can I fix this? Like I'm going to put in, because I know the value of the relationship that we have. I'm going to put in any necessary work that it takes to get there. Yes, it's frustrating. Yes, it's hard, but a relation, like everybody thinks like, oh, dating is hard. I'm like, dating was the easy part. Like being in a committed relationship where you have to constantly work, that's way more work.
It's a choice every day. And it doesn't mean that you lack love.
Correct.
It's a choice to do the work.
Correct.
Like you can love someone, but if you're choosing not to do the work, the love will change.
And then you'll have people say, well, being in a relationship shouldn't be that hard. If it's that hard, maybe no.
Anything in life,
it's hard.
You can do a business. You can be doing something that you love doing. There will be moments where it's hard, especially as you're trying to make it better. If you're trying to grow your business and you got to a point where it's success, I mean, no shade to Brunchaholics, for example. I'm sure when they were doing pop-ups at the farmer's market, it was cool. It was like, hey, I'm gonna make these burritos.
Yeah.
It's a very limited menu. We're gonna make X amount. We hope we sell out. It's great. Then they say, hey, we want to be bigger. We want to evolve this business. And they try to scale into their location off of Ross. And I'm sure there were challenges. Now I gotta have a bigger menu. Now I have overhead costs. Now I have an employee. There are more aspects of the business that were now required to make sure that you have the same level of attention. That made that business challenging, where they had to close, and now they're in a different location in South Dallas or in Duncanville, DeSoto, right? So anytime you want more for for yourself, it's gonna require more work, and it just boggles my mind that people are just, maybe it's just a culture these days. People are trying to get a whole bunch without doing much, and it just does nothing works like that.
Agreed.
Nothing works like that. And so that was my tangent. Sorry, I can't stand people like, I just work. Tell me what you do who's successful in anything that doesn't do work.
Yeah, anything worth having is worth working for.
You can love it. Like work does not negate love, but if you don't work at it, you can definitely lose some love for it, because it's all about the experience.
This episode is sponsored by Nello Effect, a coaching and consulting service that helps people turn mindfulness into action as they navigate the dating world as well as their relationships. Follow on Instagram at nello.effect and find more information in the episode description.
And we talk about how you would have responded potentially had the conversation you had once you were engaged came up while you guys were dating. And it makes me think about vulnerability. Do you feel like prior to the point where you made the decision to propose, not when you did it, because you made the decision already, that you felt that you could be as vulnerable as you need to be, where you felt safe and trusted prior to? Like, where was your vulnerability level prior to the proposal and like once you proposed and all that kind of stuff?
Yeah. So with my wife, I've always felt safe, but I don't think like me personally as a man, that vulnerability was something that I like measured. When you use the term comfortable, safe, yes, I've always felt that. I think I told you earlier, like her heart is pure. Like I knew she never had bad intentions. So that's not anything I ever worried about. But it's funny that you bring that up, because now that we've been married, approaching 3 years, vulnerability is something that I talk about all the time. So when we first got married, everybody was like, oh, does it feel different? Does it feel different? Oh, y'all already lived together prior to marriage. Does it feel different? And I was like, it actually does. I used to always talk about she needed the reassurance, that she needed, the comfort of saying that I'm a wife versus a girlfriend and having the ring. But then I didn't know that I needed it too. Mm-hmm. And so I remember I made an Instagram post about, being married for 1 month. And I talked about me being so comfortable and being vulnerable. And even now, I think you mentioned earlier, like, oh, you're a confident guy, you're good looking, you can, like, regardless of how high you think, somebody is and how confident that you think somebody is, everybody has like their low moments. Mm-hmm. Everybody has stuff that insecurities. And me and my wife, we do counseling. So I'm horrible with dates and time frames. My wife will always correct me, but over a year now, couples counseling. And one thing I talk about is how comfortable I am in sharing all of my insecurities. There are no insecurities that my wife does not know about when I'm feeling down about something, insecure about something, because I know that she would never use that against me. Mm. Sometimes in relationships, like early, you could tell somebody something, and then when it's not, the relationship's no longer in their best interest, they're no longer in your best interest. Oh, and sure. I think that's the difference of my wife. And when I say she's pure, even when I wasn't like on her good side of likings, she has always been in my best interest. She has always comforted me in my insecurities. And I had to learn how to do that. I was not as good as doing that as her. And so when you bring up vulnerability, I think I needed it just as much as she needed it. And that's a strong point in our relationship.
Yeah. No, I think that's great. And I also think that's a theme that's been echoed this season around almost a word for word line. Like, she wasn't going to bring up stuff that I communicated in the heat of the moment or being upset. And maybe that's the thing that happens. And so I think that's one thing to think about, and to show like the evolution of vulnerability in your relationship, and highlighting the fact that as much as maybe it gets projected of what women need from an affirmation or safe space, men need it as well. Yep. We may not be aware that we need it and can call it what it is, but there's a need there as well. I was just trying to also see if there was a correlation between, things you might have needed in place for you to respond to her prior to being engaged, around some of those, being a fixer for the relationship that you were post being engaged. And I was just trying to understand if your level of comfort, safety, being able to be vulnerable with her was tied to how you might respond in that situation if it was, greater. There may not be a disconnect. I was just curious if that came to mind, or anything that thought of those being tied together in terms of how you respond to, if she was like, hey, Terrence, I'm not getting what I need, and this is what I need to get to give you what you need. Yeah. Would you respond the same way prior to engagement if you guys had more of that than you do, once you were engaged?
Yeah. Couple things. So vulnerability for me, I don't think it was like a measure, like I mentioned before. But one area where I didn't start, like we mentioned, I didn't start off on the right foot, just because I wasn't in that I'm looking for a relationship mindset. But I thought, when I did take the steps of, okay, now we live together, things are going well, I'm committed to you, I propose to you, I thought that erased everything that I did in the past. And I'd even, like you say, I was just talking with my homeboys, and something like, I wasn't complaining, but I was like, man, she still brings up stuff out the past, and this is what I'm doing now. I thought that, because I took those steps, it erased things. And I even had some homeboys be like, bro, she needs to get over that. Like, oh, that's in the past. Now, I know that was completely wrong. Like, me just taking the steps that I was supposed to take anyways doesn't erase. Like, we actually had to unpack, what I did in the past. And so that's what, like I mentioned, we do counseling, and we unpack that. And so we were able to finally kind of get over the past. So we've been engaged, married, and we were still working on stuff prior. And so one thing, my wife, she always wants to, hey, we need to kind of fully resolve where this situation and before we move forward. And typically I rush things. And so I'd be like, I can take it on. Kids, for example, I know I've always wanted kids. As soon as we got married, I was like, all right, boom, let's start having kids. She was like, hey, let's continue to work on our relationship. And I was like, well, we're already older, we're in our mid-30s, but we ended up waiting. And then I remember in a counseling session, I was like, you know what? Ashley was right. We have strengthened the core of our marriage so much that having a child is not easy. But it's so much better for us because we took the time to learn, took the time to grow, took time to unpack the past and resolve those areas of doubt or issues. And it's making everything better now. But me being who I am, I'm confident. I'm the type of person, I'm gonna make a decision, I'm gonna stick to it. But I had to start learning to listen, and listen why. And I can't just take everything on. I can't rush things. And so a lot of times now I'm reflecting, I'm like, oh, okay, I'm glad that she challenged. And so that's another area of challenge where hey, we're going to have a family. And me, I was like, no time's going to be a perfect time. And she challenged me.
You're trying to get to the next.
Hey, Terrence, this is what I think we need to work on. And so that's a healthy challenge. And now in retrospect, I really respect and just appreciate that, hey, she slowed me down a little bit. And so I think in multiple aspects where I had to reflect in order to understand, one where you said, hey, she challenged, and also kind of just before and after where we stood and how I respond to things.
One of the things that I hear you saying is that there has to be grace given, that no one's going to be exactly where you want them to be. And sometimes you have to meet people where they're at. Because I think people want a ready-built person that's going to be exactly what they want, when they want them to be, how they want them to be. And the reality is people choose to, not morph into that, but become closer to that over time. As you understand what your partner's needs are, what they want, what you need to do to adjust to become that, you naturally, when we talk about choosing, every day you choose, you're making decisions to fulfill those. And part of fulfilling those is how do I have to think differently, do differently, respond differently in order to give that person what they need. So I heard you say that. The other part was that you guys went to counseling, and I was curious to see in that, was it proactive, or was it because you guys needed to resolve those things, or there was an issue specifically that you guys were trying to address?
So we started going to counseling to resolve past issues because we were married and issues of prior to engagement were still happening. And I'm like, look, this is where we are. I don't understand why we're still talking about this stuff. And we unpacked that, and it was healthy. And we've gotten over that. But now we just go on an ongoing basis, more proactive. Honestly, I think our counselor is our friend. She's super dope, super cool. She's one of our, we're actually meeting her outside of our counseling session. I was like, hey, are you allowed to meet with us outside? Let's go to lunch. No, I appreciate her time. I just wanted to meet her outside of our counseling session because we do virtual. We've never met her in person.
Gotcha.
Yeah, I wanted to meet her in person. Yeah, super dope counselor. And so now we do it. And I think any relationship, the biggest thing is conflict resolution. Whereas it could be something small. We used to let conflicts we would go to sleep upset, or it'd go a couple of days, not being on the same accord. Now it's like, okay, we got a conflict. We communicate what's going to be the resolution. We get over. Like, our conflict resolution has just our ability to just communicate and get over it and move on.
Yeah.
That's amazing now compared to before, when we weren't communicating. We weren't really listening to one another. We weren't trying to do for one another. Yeah.
It's a little weird though, at least when you get to that point where conflict comes, like when you go from like what we see on TV, maybe certain experiences, and then you get to a point like you're almost trying not to have things blow up, and then you get to a point the first few times you have a conflict, it doesn't feel great, you kind of talk about it and it's done, and you're like waiting for more, and it's like literally we talked about it.
Yeah,
I heard you, she heard me, we feel heard, and then that's it.
Yeah. And
you trust that person's receiving it, right?
Yeah.
To me, sometimes when you're transitioning from like what been the past to that more healthy conflict resolution, it can feel weird because it seems like you're waiting for the other foot to drop, and then it doesn't drop, and you're like,
yeah,
did we do it?
Agreed. Agreed. And I think what we talked about in the prior episode, it was like, well, protecting her for me, but also me getting in the way of me. Mm-hmm. So now, I there's no such thing as pride to me anymore. A lot of men would be like, oh, my pride wouldn't let me do this, or I'm not going to talk to, like, we can get into something. I step in the next room, I do, let's say I go away for 2 hours. I'm going to come back. Hey, babe, I know I approached it this way. I apologize. I should have done better this way. And even when there's something wrong that I've done, she'll say, yes, I still could have done this. And then like, it's over. And then when we go to our counseling sessions now, we do it every 2 weeks. When we first started, it was every week. Now it's every 2 weeks or every 3 weeks. She'll ask us like, oh, how did this week go? And sometimes I'll be like, oh, something came up, but we resolved it. We don't even need to talk about it. Mm-hmm. It's like, I don't even want to rehash it. I was like, we're good. We're good. We resolved it on our own. And I'm happy that we can do that.
Actually, no, but we still need to talk about it.
Sometimes we still talk about it too.
Like, damn, I thought we.
And sometimes there's even stuff that's deeper. And I was like, see, that's why I didn't want to talk about it. But no, I actually look forward to our counseling sessions. And a lot of my friends and stuff, like, I'm a proponent. I was like, maybe y'all need to go to counseling. And then some people will say like, why do you need somebody to like tell y'all, what y'all need to do? And I was like, honestly, sometimes you just need a safe space, and sometimes you just need a different perspective as well. Because I could be saying something, and what I'm saying is not what's being said. Is my intentions aren't what's perceived. So sometimes the counselor just rewords it and hey, is this what you mean? And I'll tell you, I have a lot of epiphanies in counseling. I'll be like, you know what? Oh, like light bulbs hit me and perspectives change. And so it's been very, very healthy for us. And just also, again, taking that and putting into practice. You can't just go to counseling and be like, okay, my relationship's going to be good. Like, again, like going back to the work, back to the work is more work. It's like, okay, what are we learning as far as conflict resolution, listening, giving each other grace, like identifying when the person has needs that aren't being fulfilled and what you can do to help. And also just, just give to your spouse. Make sure that my wife is always big on like her cup being full, and if I fill her cup, she's going to fill mine.
Oh, for sure. No, I commend it. I think it's great that you are doing that. Several things like popped into my head while you were talking about it, but I do think that proactive counseling is beneficial because you get a neutral space to talk about those things. You get perspective that sometimes when someone's wording something to you, just by the history that you have, they receive it differently than someone that has like no stake no dog in the fight.
Yeah.
Like I was in a situation with an ex and we were in couples counseling, and I was telling the counselor basically how like I would do things that she wanted me to do that I didn't want to do, but because I care, I'm doing it. And she'd always like be upset about that. And I'm like, I'm doing it because I care. For someone else, I wouldn't do it. You should be happy that I'm doing it. And that was something that we were dealing with. And I don't know what the lady said, but she just framed it in a certain way that my girlfriend at the time was like,
Oh, I never saw it like that. And me, I'm like, I've been saying this for, but that's the value of it, right? And another thing that came to mind was, like you said, you thought that, because we talked about it, just especially with some of the things in the past, that, okay, it's done. Like, why are you bringing this up? And I would say this to anybody. If you've made a deep mistake or caused a deep wound in your relationship, that person will never forget. And you can't expect them to forget. There may be random things that trigger that. And because you were the person that caused it, you have to be mindful of that and let them have that moment. Not to say you abuse it, right? But you never know that. It's easy to talk about cheating, but there could be a lot of different things that break trust, right? And there could be one slight thing that triggers that person that makes them think about it. And now they're feeling feelings that they haven't had in a while.
Yep.
And for you that caused that, to then say, well, why are you still feeling that way, is very insensitive, right? And that's one of the reasons why I say, I don't want to be a person that ever cheats in a relationship, because if I use my fiance now, one of the things that I appreciate about her and love about her is she lets me be me. And I have female friends. I go out, not out, but there might be times where I go out and she'll say, I'll be like, I'm coming back at 11. She's like, nah, you're going to be out all night. I already know. Part of that, I don't go out often. But she's not like, where you at, right? And I need that, because the way I operate with my friends, the same way you said, when we go places, she can do her thing and she's not tied to the hip with me. I appreciate that. And I don't want to do anything in our relationship that will make her now doubt that limits me in that capacity. And so because she's given me that, I almost see it's so fragile for us that any little thing, not little thing, but anything could break that. And now I don't want to envision what our relationship will look like if I'm trying to now counter that, because I broke that trust. And a guy told me that once, he's like, she will never forget. He's like, once you do something it could go either way, to break trust, you can rebuild and rebuild and rebuild. But you always have to be mindful that anything, it might not be something you did, can trigger those emotions, and you have to be cognizant of that. You have to be sensitive to that and give her space to, hopefully you have done the work so she can navigate through that quickly to then get back to where you guys are at. Because I think the guy's reaction usually is now he's pissed that she's annoyed by something. And it's like, bro, you started it. You led to the to the broken trust piece of it.
No, agreed. And so I am so grateful that we are over that, because similar to you, when I do get out, I am a social person, and I don't want, to have to stop being me because of what I've done in the past. So we've gotten over that. If me and my wife go out, she's gonna move around the room, she's gonna talk to people, she's gonna meet people. I'm gonna do the same thing. Actually, one story. This is how comfortable, my wife knows me. Mm-hmm. And so I was at a bachelor party actually during the pandemic. And
what?
It was actually the very start of the pandemic. This is when things were shutting down.
Gotcha.
We weren't even sure if we were going to make it back home, because that's when things started shutting down. So it was Jono's bachelor party.
Yeah, I was like, okay.
And it was the next morning, you're talking about the night before, and I'm on the phone with Ashley, and we're not even engaged at the moment. And I was like, yeah, we were hanging out, then we met these girls. Then we went to this bar, and then hey bro, why you telling her we met girls, and then we went to this spot with them. And I'm like, bro, my girl knows me. If I told her we went to a bachelor party and we weren't hanging around other girls, she'd be like, one, y'all are squares, and two, you lying.
Yeah.
And so I'm very forthcoming. If I have female friends or we were out, if me and my partners go out and then we went to a strip club, some people would be like, oh, I gotta hide it. I'm like, no, I'm gonna tell my wife, oh, we went to this spot, then we went to a strip club, then we did this. Oh yeah, I bought this, round of drinks for these girls or whatever, or my female friends. She's not gonna trip, because she knows who I am as a person, and I had to rebuild that trust. Mm-hmm. But most of the time, if it's stuff that I'm not hiding, that was never the issue.
Yeah.
The issue was always stuff that I was hiding.
Yeah.
So
sure.
yeah.
For sure.
But 100%, I appreciate that my wife lets me be me.
No, for sure. I do. I know we cutting down for time, but I do want to know, and you've alluded to it for you, but if you think about how you've matured, in your marriage thus far, what would you say?
I would say just how
Like, to what degree, where have you matured?
listening. I think my biggest part is just listening to her needs, and then being very, very objective on how I address her needs, whatever those may be. And those are evolving. So what she need, when we first got married, may be different than what she needs now. Well, it's actually right now it's completely different since we have you have a kid into the mix. And so it's listening and addressing.
Yeah, I like that you said that it's changing. That it's not like, oh, she told me this, and then 7 months later is different. No, it's our needs evolve. We're people. How would you say that? How would you answer the question for her? How has she matured and evolved? In y'all's marriage thus far.
I mean, a lot of evolving on her, but she makes things easy for me. Like it's not hard. There's not a lot of conflict. Like, she's very supportive. So I do a lot. Like, one, my job is demanding. Two, I like to, run, bike. I like to be social. I like to hang out with my friends. And she allows me to be me but still keeping me accountable, to her. And so to her, there is a balance of, like, I got to let Terrence do everything that Terrence needs for himself, as well as still keeping him accountable to me and challenging me. And I told her from the front, like, I need somebody to challenge me. I need somebody to make me better. I need somebody to make me stronger, faster, smarter, do things differently. And if I'm doing something wrong, I want you to let me know. And so, like, she really is like my best friend. I ask her opinions on a lot of things, and it can be from, am I making the wrong decision, to, like, one, I'd say this is some very, very nice decorations.
Well, thank you. Will Joe and Co. If you ever need interior design services, design the set.
Yeah, no, I may need to enlist her services,
because you just got a new house.
We just moved into a new house, but everything I do in the house, so I'm in charge of the decor. I walk in, I'll be like, hey, what's your gut feeling on this? Like, just challenging me, like, what needs to be changed. But just in any aspect, like, she's there to bounce my opinions off of. When I leave the house, like, I'm calling her like multiple times a day. I'm sure she hates that I call her so much. Yeah. I'm like, oh, hey. And she'd be like, Terrence, you can tell me this when you get home. Oh, all right. I'm gonna let you go.
That's beautiful. Yeah.
So I think just in how she supports me and the support that I need, because I can be needy. Yeah. That's how she's evolved. She's always done great, but just that balance of support and challenge.
Cool. Well, I want to be mindful of time. I definitely want to make sure that we get to the round robin questions and talk about Terrence's experience in fatherhood. So make sure you stay tuned to our conversation that drops next week, where we'll learn more about Tatum, his evolution into fatherhood, and his growth as a man in that regard. So make sure you subscribe to the podcast on YouTube and follow on Instagram at ThinkLoveWife. And until next time, you know what it is. I hope the conversation keeps going.